Okay, so does anyone have anything they'd like to share or comment on or ask any questions this morning?
Thank you for the lecture this morning about performance versus feeling, having good feeling in your body and opening. Performance has been a particular issue of mine throughout my martial arts career because it always seemed to me that the focus was on performance. So are you saying in that Tai Chi, we want to focus on both performance and feeling, but the feeling comes first? Or is it the focus on performance leads us to the feeling? I was a little confused about, well, mostly because of my background, but what comes first?
I think your question is, I think you're asking that the lecture about performance versus loving yourself, was helpful, but I think you're trying to determine when you say what comes first, what do you mean by what comes first? If you don't mind actually clarifying, I'm realizing that I'm not quite understanding the heart of the question.
Well, in my previous training, which has been Aikido and yoga, it was always, here's the ideal, whatever you have to do, just reach the ideal. And Sun Shan, you focused more on, there's a feeling that you're trying to accomplish, loving yourself being a way to feeling rather than performance. So, but you said the performance is still an element, and so do you give us an ideal? We shoot for the ideal, and then performance work into that. I'm a little confused.
Understood. I think it came from me saying performance is still important to us, but we can't choose performance over loving ourselves. I think you're trying to balance the statement. What does it really mean, practically speaking? Is it correct?
Yes, sir. The practicality of it is what's got me a little confused.
Okay, understood. Okay, so I was explaining that performance is important, because if it wasn't important to all of us, we wouldn't be focusing on it so much. And performance is actually a type of self-love. If we look at why we want to perform, it's so that we have worth, and particularly worth to others, so that we will feel that, oh, we're useful to other people and we're important to other people because we have some inherent value. And it's kind of interesting, including inner peace, because it's kind of like, if you can find inner peace, then oftentimes there's hope that you can help someone else find inner peace, which ironically, is providing benefit for the people. And and so there's always like a dual component to it. There's always a yin and a yang to it. It's never, and so to expect someone to give up performance is actually not helpful, because it's, kind of like saying, you've been focusing on your dominant hand, but you need to give up your dominant hand and just focus on your non-dominant hand. Well, that doesn't exactly work either, and that's not even really self-love. And so a real solution would allow a person to perform to the best of their ability in a way, but in a way that's caring for oneself, where other people's opinion doesn't become more important to the individual than your own opinion of yourself, if you will, where other people's standard doesn't become more important than your own standard of your own self. So that's kind of like the premise in terms of concept, but practically speaking, what does it really mean? Right? I mean, that's the crux of the matter. What does it really mean? And so performance, let's say, for instance, whatever art it is you're doing, performance is there to let people know what is possible. And typically also it determines, and it's also a growth avenue and path for people who have a certain particular talent in a certain area. And so, and it's an avenue for people to become more useful to each other. So let's say, for instance, if you are interested in something, there's something about that for that individual that's really important. And so that importance, you know, it shows that that person, for one reason or another, that avenue is the avenue that they chose in which how they want to find worth for themselves and the world, if you will. And so the areas, whether it's martial arts, yoga, or knitting, or writing, or whatever it is, people who have a particular interest or talent in that area, they get together in order to become better in what they already want to be better at. And so there's gonna be always a performance standard. And it's also true that there are some general things that actually happen that genuinely makes a difference in terms of how it can hit the masses, if that makes sense. Meaning that there are certain things that are more effective on the whole than other. And so those standards in general have been formed around those measures where, you know, it's like, oh, okay. It's like, if you do this in general, then, you know, you'll be more effective. So that's what performance standards are. So there's, you know, there are general standards where whatever school you belong to deemed this seems to be the most effective things that we found, you know, over time. And so that's a standard. Now, the issue with standard is that not everyone can do those standards, or, you know, sometimes, you know, at all for one reason or another. Like for instance, you know, this morning I was giving splits as an example, and, you know, like for some people, the way I actually knew this one person who actually was in the Hapkido school that I was part of, and his actual hips, the way, you know, his hips were, like literally, if he tried to do the side splits, you know, his what you call his legs would meet the bones of his hips. His hips were actually just narrow, and so he could do the front splits no problem, but not the side splits. Now, if he tried to get the side splits, he would actually really hurt himself unless he somehow found the way to actually move his pelvic bones. Now that's actually possible. Now, I didn't actually even know about that back then, because this is like when I was in my teens, and, you know, and like I didn't learn those things until now. But I mean, not now, but until much later. But anyways, but so sometimes these performance standards actually, they don't work, because your particularity actually doesn't work for that. And if your worth gets defined by that particularity, then, you know, that doesn't work. I mean, that's never going to work. And so so instead of actually kind of having this concept that, oh, like, you know, the height of this is for someone to be able to get the splits. And so that's an easy standard to hit because it's easy to measure. And so that's how oftentimes standards are created. But in reality, actually, what's more important is that you get the person to maximize their potential. And not everyone has the same level of flexibility. And so instead of actually looking at everyone getting to the splits, it's actually more important to get everyone to the maximum range of motion. If we're talking in terms of movement, to their maximum range of motion possible, and then allow them to actually enjoy that improvement within their range of motion. And ironically, that would actually create a more diverse profile of diversity that can benefit more people, actually. And so, like, oftentimes people don't want to think in those terms because then they feel like, oh, that means if I never get the splits, that means I'll never be as worthy. But actually, that's not the case. You know, like in the particular Hapkido school I was going to, that it was a good school actually, and it was a good school in terms of teamwork, where it was kind of interesting. People would say, "Oh, he's a really good kicker. Oh, he's a really good grappler. When it comes to grappling, he's like the guy," you know, or like, "Oh, he's the best when it comes to break falls," or and so like it was kind of like there was a mutual respect for being good at different things, and there was kind of like a certain humility. Well, yeah, I'm good at this, but you're good at this. You can help me with this, and so and it was also interesting because when you have this kind of spirit of exploration where you start with accepting the self first, where wow, I would love to get the splits, but this is, you know, what I can do, and I'm not sure I'll ever get the splits, but you know, if I move like this, I feel better. I can feel my body loosening up and actually brings me to my full potential. That picture is a lot better than feeling like you're not realizing your full potential because you're not able to do something. And so the challenge is shifting the definition of what it means to be successful from an external one to an internal one, but not ignoring that even though we say internal, it doesn't mean that, and this is where the balance has to come in. It has to still be meaningful in a way to the external. So you can't just be in an island where you say, well, you know, I'm just going to be satisfied by myself. But what you'll notice is that you know, that works, but it doesn't work fully. It only works to a certain extent. You know, we actually get a lot of value and happiness out of actually being able to serve each other and impact each other, be impacted and impact. And so there is an aspect where you have to learn to be happy by yourself. But then there's also an aspect where when you are with other people, that you can be happy with other people. And so when we talk about cultivation, and whatever cultivation it is, you know, whether it be knitting or quilting, oftentimes it's rare to come across someone who is actually just happy just to knit for themselves. There are some people like that, actually. You know, I've met them. So yeah, he's like, I just need something to do with my hands, and this is the best way I can do that. But oftentimes, people, they do it for an audience where they knit for someone. So it's got dual purpose. There's an aspect of self-regulation, and then there's an aspect of co-regulation where you're getting along and taking care of each other in that manner. So when we cultivate, or whatever it is we do, when we do it outside of this yin yang principle of finding balance in your own self and then actually also with others, you know, it doesn't work. So, and that's why I feel like it sometimes gets complex, because we want to simplify it and say, well, okay, well, I shouldn't care about what other people say. Now, I know that the moment someone says, I shouldn't care about what other people say, I know they're in trouble, because it's not possible. You know, it's not possible not to care about what other people say. But it is possible to not have what other people say impact you in a way that's harmful to yourself. So, and that's kind of the harmony that we're going for. And so practically speaking, what it comes back to is you change the performance metric. And the way you change the performance metric is, instead of saying, okay, you got to get the full splits, you say, okay, I'm going to study good movement. And good movement means that I don't force myself. And then I can feel when I'm forcing myself. And then I'm going to learn how to move less and slower until I feel my body opening. And that's in the beginning not as exciting because you can't talk to anyone, you can't impress anyone with that necessarily as much. Unless you have someone experience it, because it does take care of pain and it brings ease to your body relatively quickly, but it's not so flashy, it's not impressive per se, right? And so, but what happens is that as you start moving your joints in smaller ways and in ways that don't force it, your joints start opening up, and the movement that was restrictive opens up and then becomes looser, and your range of motion actually all of a sudden increases, where ironically you get closer to your splits. If you use force on the first 2 or 3 days, you make more gains, and then you start going backwards because your whole body gets tight, because your body has a, if you push against your body pushes back, right? So there's a natural fight back response. So if you force on your body, then your body pushes back against that force. And so naturally your body tenses. So in the first day, you may win, but over time the tension accumulates. So by actually becoming present with yourself and then studying these movements with patience, you actually learn how to become present with your own body. And you actually learn how to become present with the quality of your movement. As that happens, you actually just naturally become grounded and your body opens up. And as your body opens up, your range of motion naturally increases. And then as your joints open up, they start actually chain linking, meaning as in they start opening up through your whole body. And what people don't realize is that because our body's interconnected, for you to get the splits, it's not just enough for your legs to be flexible. The entire spine needs to actually relax all the way down to your arms and your neck and your head. And so as you start feeling that opening up, you start actually naturally dropping into your splits. But because it's not forced, it actually feels good. And the quality of your life and your health starts improving. And there's a sense of taking care of yourself versus following an external reward of impressing other people. But ironically, as it happens, that becomes more and more impressive as well. But the feeling of being present with yourself, and from there, being able to feel your feelings in your body becomes very rewarding. And actually, ironically, that presence carries over into your other relationships. And so your life starts becoming more rewarding as a whole. And so your performance actually goes up. So you start actually staying with it because it's a more complete definition of love, if I will. So it's not that you're trying to choose between self-love and performance. It's that you're trying to love yourself better. You're trying to love yourself by performing before and becoming worthy. Whereas in this case, you're realizing you have inherent worth as it is, where for you to be present, and there's certain uniqueness that comes with your own body, and that you need to actually be present to understand the unique needs of your body until you can see what those unique needs are and being able to serve that. And ironically, that training allows you to pay attention to the unique needs of the people in your life and allows you to actually be more empathetic. And that increases your performance and impact on everything. So that's kind of like the broader perspective of what I was talking about this morning. So is that clear, Ms. Cutts?
Thank you, Master Kim. Yeah, that ties together so many of the Tai Chi principles as well. And I'm very grateful for that explanation. Thank you.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad. So, okay, excellent. Okay. So, does anyone else have, like before I move on, I just want to say, it's like the concept that you should be compassionate with yourself, I think, is an absolute one. Meaning as in like it's common to all. And I think the difficulty is in the execution of it. And I feel that oftentimes people don't realize that one of the simple answers is actually just learning how to move differently. Move in a way where you're present with your movements, where you're not forcing yourself. Because when you don't force yourself, it registers in our brain as acceptance automatically. And our life changes from having to force to actually that of acceptance, just from that small change. And so I just kind of wanted to say that, and I think those are the kind of secrets for self-love we're looking for. Different ways to be present. And just being present, you can learn that through meditation, but actually learning to be present by finding meditative movements, that's really key.
Thank you, Master Kim.
Welcome. Okay. Does anyone have I have probably just enough time to take one more question or one more comment. If anyone has anything else they would like to share, ask, or comment on.
Okay, it doesn't seem like anyone else does, so I'll go. Thank you for the teachings today. They were super helpful and really, really timely. I've been really fatigued this week, and I feel like it was really a blessing because with the fatigue and also with kind of the teachings, I did even less. Like I've been trying to do less, but I did even less than less, and it was so much more effective. And it's like, it's a realization I've had before. And I've even, I think, shared that before, but it's like, I did even less than I thought was less. And it was so much more effective. And I also focused less on trying to have what I was doing be looking what yours was doing, and just like really, really, really small movement, like in the one where you have like your foot back and then you're like, like arching back. I didn't even bother with the arching back. I just started with the foot. I was like, you
Good
know
for
what,
you.
we're right. It's like, we're not even arching back. Thank you. And that actually took me to the arching back, actually much better than normally when I was actually trying to do it. So that was really helpful. I wanted to share that. And thank you for the teachings, which were perfect for what I needed. And then I also wanted to share, I had an experience with breathing where breathing into, I was doing the central column breathing and I was breathing into my heart. And if normally when I do it, I feel like the center, I'm breathing into something and then like something fills or opens or something has a different quality. But it felt like I was breathing into like, I don't know how to say it. It's kind of like it wasn't going into anything. It's like somehow it was going inside of me. Like it was going into my soul or like it was going into a different dimension or something like that. And it's an experience I hadn't had before. Like it wasn't going into anywhere physical or energetic. It was like somehow going into a different dimension within me. And then breathing into the central column and the thrusting vessel in the arms and legs. It's the same feeling. It was like, it wasn't going into an actual vessel. It was like somehow going within or something like that.
Yeah. It actually is, but I know what you're talking about because like you don't feel like anything, but it's actually just deeper in. So if you check in, you'll notice that actually it is going deeper, but it's actually happening. but there's no movement at the muscular level, but there's actually, if I were to say it, it's actually movement at the cellular level.
Ah, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's actually a deeper breathing, and that's actually the basis of silent breath.
Mm,
Because so it's like, it seems like it's not, but for somehow it's going in, but there's nothing like really different happening, and it's not like your energy is like expanding and becoming big, but for some reason it's just going somewhere, and you feel good, and you feel better actually, and you just feel more normal and natural, um, and and it feels more fundamental. And so,
that is, oh yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's super helpful because I'm realizing now as you're saying it, it feels like silent breath, but I'm not used to it because I was doing a pressurized breathing.
Yeah.
So I'm not used to that feeling because typically when I do a pressurized breathing, it feels different than just the silent breath. And
Yeah.
now that you're saying that it's really connecting, it makes total sense.
Yeah. It's what's the word for it? The silent breath. That's actually why you need to learn silent breath and pressurized breathing together, because the experience that you had actually is really difficult to get just from doing silent breath. You can get there doing silent breath, but I find that actually when your breath capacity fundamentally increases doing pressurized breathing or the more rougher breathings, because the breath capacity increases, your body, when you're just breathing normally, or even less with less effort, it actually it gives you clearer feedback because you've got more to work with.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why it's always a yin and the yang. Tai Chi is neither soft or hard, it's both, and it's just a question of finding that balance. So
Thank you. Yeah, that is really, really helpful. And it feels like that it's like connecting everything for me. I really appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, I am done cleaning, so I gotta get going here. So why don't you all have a great day of cultivating and training. And I'm going to say, love yourself in a way where not only are you going for performance, but you're going for your inner performance, which is health. Not only are you going for fitness, but you're also going for health, where you're taking care of yourself and you're exploring with your body and then finding out what feels good for you by exploring these subtle movements that really open up your body, where the quality of your movement goes up. And enjoy and explore that, and happy findings. And let that lead to all the performance you're looking for.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Master Kim.
Welcome.
Thank you, Master Kim.
Welcome. Welcome. Okay. Bye.